born into a world where my last name opens more doors than I care to walk through. You could say my path was laid out for me. My dad's the big boss of a company you've probably seen tick across the stock exchange more times than you've cursed your alarm clock. Yes, that kind of rich. But if you're expecting tales of a golden girl draped in designer clothes and sipping champagne for breakfast, you've got the wrong story. I've always kept it real, feet firmly on the ground. Money is nice, sure, but it's not everything. I chose a different path, one that's led me to places money can't buy and experiences no gold card can fetch. Charity work, helping those in need, and living the life that's, well, ordinary. That's me, Jessica, not the heiress, just Jessica. One of those typical evenings found me and my friend Sarah at a downtown dive, the kind where the beer's cheap and the lights are dim enough to hide your regrets. Sarah was hyped up about some guy she met online. You've got to meet him, Jess. He's totally your type, she insisted. My type? Since when did she decide she knew my type? We were there when in walked Alex. Definitely not Sarah's online prince, but another dude. He was there with friends, looking out of place like a cat at a dog show. He wasn't dressed to impress, just a simple tee and jeans, but his easy smile lit up the room. We started talking, and it was refreshingly easy. He worked as a manager at a place I'd never heard of, but he spoke about it with a passion that was kind of infectious. You really dig your job, huh? I asked, sipping on my third beer. Absolutely, Alex said, leaning in. Every day's a challenge, but hey, I'm not here to bore you with work talk. What about you? Sarah mentioned charity work. I shrugged, trying to downplay it. Yeah, a bit of this and that, just trying to do my bit, you know? That's cool. Really cool, he said, genuinely not trying to impress me but meeting it. The night rolled on, and Alex and I stuck together, chatting about everything and nothing. It was refreshing to talk to someone who wasn't trying to sell me on an investment or brag about their latest acquisition. As the night wound down, Alex got this look like he was working up to something. Hey, Jessica, I know this is kind of forward, but would you want to grab dinner with me sometime? Just us, he asked. I felt a mix of surprise and excitement. Sure, I said, trying to sound cool. I'd like that. On the way home, Sarah was all giggles. I told you so. I just smiled, thinking about the evening. Alex was a breath of fresh air in my often too stale world. Little did I know how much things were about to change. Soon, going out turned into hanging out at each other's places. Mostly my cozy apartment because Alex's roommates were a circus and a half. One evening, sprawled on the couch after devouring what might have been the world's most average taco pizza, Alex turned to me, his eyes serious but his tone light. Jessica, how do you feel about making this a more permanent arrangement? He asked, crumbs still clinging to the corner of his mouth. I raised an eyebrow. You proposing we split a Netflix account or something more along the lines of it? He chuckled, brushing off the crumbs. Well, I was thinking more like a life together. But hey, we can start with Netflix. The simplicity of it, the straightforwardness, no grand gestures or dramatic backdrops, just us in our element. It felt right. Alex, if you're asking what I think you're asking, yes, 1,000 times yes. And just like that, with the aroma of cheap pizza as our witness, we decided to tie the knot. It was swift, sure, but when you know. Telling our families was the next hurdle. My folks, always about the as long as you're happy mantra, were put to the test. Dad, with his business empire, and Mom, the socialite, had visions of me settling down with someone more in our circle. I broke the news over dinner, the fancy kind where you're not sure which fork to use for the salad. Mom, Dad, I'm getting married to Alex, I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. Dad paused, fork midair. Alex, the manager chap? Well, that's quick. Mom smiled a bit too tightly. Dear, are you sure? This is rather sudden, isn't it? But I was firm. Yes, I'm sure. He's amazing, and we're really happy together. Their skepticism was palpable, but so was their love. Well, if he makes you happy, darling, Mom conceded, and Dad nodded in agreement. Alex's folks were a whole different ballgame. We went over to their place, a cozy little house that always seemed to smell like fresh cookies or something equally comforting. Judy and Martin welcomed me like I'd always been a part of the family. Alex tells us you're setting a date, Martin said, passing me a plate of those infamous cookies. Yes, we're thinking sooner rather than later. Small ceremony, nothing fancy. I replied, trying to gauge their reaction. Judy beamed at me and said, "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We're just thrilled for you both." Their warmth was enveloping, a stark contrast to the cautious optimism of my own parents. It was clear from the start that our worlds were different, but the common ground was the genuine happiness they felt for me and Alex. When it came to planning the wedding, we were on the same page. Keep it simple, keep it us. A small ceremony with close friends and family, and an open bar because, as Alex put it, if we're doing this, we're making sure everyone's having a good time. That's how it went down. A swift engagement, not out of haste, but because everything just clicked into place. Amid the whirlwind, there were quiet moments between us that said, we're doing the right thing. And we really were. Living with Alex started off as everything I'd hoped for and more. We were like two peas in a pod, carving out our little corner of the world in that cozy modern apartment I had rented. It was ours, filled with love, laughter, and a ton of takeout containers because, let's face it, neither of us was winning any awards in the kitchen. It wasn't long before I began to notice how Alex's parents, Judy and Martin, had a way of dropping hints about things they liked or needed whenever they visited. At first, it was subtle, almost charming. "Oh, Jessica, that's a lovely coffee maker. It must make mornings a breeze," Judy would say, eyeing our shiny new appliance with a gleam in her eye. Or Martin would remark, "This sofa is just divine. Our old one's been giving me a right pain in the back." Wanting to be the good daughter-in-law, I'd surprise them with gifts, a coffee maker for Judy, a comfortable new sofa for their living room, and so on. Their initial reactions were always the same, a mix of surprise and a touch of guilt. "Oh, Jessica, you shouldn't have. This is too much," Judy would exclaim, her hands fluttering to her chest. But as humans often do, they quickly adapted. Those initial protests faded, replaced by increasingly belated hints, like a brick through a window. "Dinner at your folks' place was lovely, dear. Did you see that new TV they have? Crystal clear. Ours is practically ancient," Alex would relay, oblivious to the shift in tone. One evening, after I had splurged on a not-so-small fortune for a fancy new TV for them, Alex and I were curled up on the couch, my head resting in his lap. "They really love the TV, babe. You're amazing, you know that," he said, his fingers running through my hair. I sighed, feeling the weight of their expectations starting to press down on me. "Alex, do they expect us to keep doing this? It's getting a bit much, don't you think?" He paused, his hand halting mid-stroke. "What do you mean? They're just happy, that's all." "Happy or taking advantage?" I pushed back, sitting up to look at him. "It feels like we're their personal shopping service." Alex looked taken aback, his brow furrowing. "They're not like that, Jess. They're just not used to nice things, that's all." "But where does it end, Alex?" I argued, frustration creeping into my voice. "It's like they've got a taste for it now, and they're not looking back." The conversation ended with an uneasy truce, but it was clear we were on different pages. Judy and Martin's gratitude had turned into entitlement, and it was straining our relationship. Straining me. I loved Alex, but I wasn't about to become a bottomless ATM for his parents. When my dad's company hit the skids, it felt like the rug was yanked out from under my feet. That cushy life, poof, gone. And with it, the whole dynamic of our relationship took a nosedive. The shift wasn't gradual. It was like flipping a switch from daylight to darkness. I had to break the news to Alex and his folks, and let me tell you, it was a conversation I'd been dreading. "Listen up, things are going to get tight. Dad's company's tanking, and well, we're in for a rough ride," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but the tremor in it betrayed my nerves. Alex's reaction was a gut punch. "You're kidding me, right? What do you mean things are going to get tight? You're telling me we can't live like we used to because of your dad's mess?" His words were like ice, and for a moment, everything felt frozen in place. I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Judy and Martin's faces were no better, disappointment barely masked. "This is quite the situation you've put us in, Jessica," Martin said, his tone dripping with reproach. Just like that, the warmth and camaraderie we once shared evaporated, replaced by a cold expectation that I was somehow to blame for my family's financial downturn. Moving in with them was dressed up as a temporary solution, but our once independent life was swapped for a guest room that felt more like a cell in a house where we were clearly seen as a nuisance. The atmosphere was charged with tension, each day a reminder of how I'd somehow failed them. "We're cutting back on everything because of this," Judy would remind me sharply as she served dinner. which was a far cry from the lavish meals we used to enjoy. Martin was always quick with a comment on saving costs. "Make sure those lights are off. We're not running the charity here," he'd say. But Alex was the hardest to bear. The man I had married seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who saw me as a letdown. "Can't you do something? Talk to your dad. It's like you don't even care that we're living like this," he'd snap, anger flaring over the smallest things. Our conversations, once easy and filled with future plans, had become minefields. Every word I said felt like a potential trigger for another outburst. "I thought marrying you meant security, not this." This struggle, he'd throw at me during arguments, his words slicing through me. It was clear we weren't just dealing with financial stress. This was a test of our relationship, a revelation of true colors under pressure. I was stuck in the middle, battling disillusionment from my husband and his parents while grappling with my own sense of failure. Judy's birthday dinner was supposed to be a cozy family affair at an upscale restaurant, a break from the constant tension. Instead, it turned into the showdown of a lifetime. I should have seen it coming, given how things had been going at their place. We were all seated, menus in hand, and I was doing my best to keep the peace and blend into the background. That plan was obliterated the moment the orders started flying. Alex, with a grin that made my skin crawl, said, "Let's get the steak and lobster for us," shooting me a look that was equal parts smug and cruel. "Jessica can stick with the soup of the day. Got to save where we can, right?" The table erupted in laughter like he'd just delivered the best joke they'd ever heard. Judy chimed in, "Absolutely can't have Jessica overspending now, can we?" I felt a surge of heat, pure fury, not embarrassment. "Really? Soup? Is this some kind of sick joke?" My voice was sharper than I'd intended. "Oh, come on, Jessica, it's just a bit of fun," Alex said, his smirk still firmly in place. That was when I lost it. Fun. This is your idea of fun. When the chips are down, you just show how petty you really are. I can't believe I fell for your act. The entire restaurant went silent, all eyes on us. I didn't sit back down. "Keep your fancy dishes and pathetic jokes. I'm out." I stood up so abruptly that my chair nearly toppled over, the noise echoing and drawing more attention. Alex reached out, trying to play peacemaker. "Jessica, don't. Let's not make this a scene." "A scene? You think I care about making a scene after that stunt? This is about respect, something you clearly have none of." I yanked my arm free and headed for the exit, the weight of their stares heavy on my back. Stepping out into the night felt like breaking out of prison. My phone was blowing up. Alex, no doubt, trying to do damage control. I ignored the buzzing of my phone, my mind made up. I drove back to their place, a storm of emotions brewing inside me. How had things soared so quickly? Alex and I had been a team, or so I thought. That dinner had been a slap in the face, a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Back at the house, I packed my bags with a speed fueled by frustration. Each folded shirt felt like a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. It wasn't just about leaving a place, it was about walking away from a relationship that had shown its true colors. I turned off my phone, cutting off the barrage of messages. The silence that followed was eerie, but welcome. That night wasn't just the end of a disastrous dinner. It marked the closing of a chapter I had no interest in revisiting. After the chaos of Judy's birthday dinner, I found myself driving to my parents' house. The night was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. By the time I pulled into their driveway, my decision was clear. I needed sanctuary, but more than that, I needed advice, something only my dad could offer. Walking into the house, the familiar surroundings were both comforting and jarring. Mom was asleep, but Dad was in his study, surrounded by papers that seemed less important the moment I walked in. "Jessica, what are you doing here at this hour? Is everything okay?" he asked, standing up with a look of concern. I took a deep breath and let the events of the evening pour out in a flood. I told him about the dinner, about Alex and his parents, and how I felt reduced to nothing more than a source of income for them. Dad listened in silence, his expression hardening with every word. When I finished, he sighed, a sound heavy with years of experience and a hint of sorrow. "Jessica, I saw this coming. I just hoped I was wrong," he said, his voice steady but filled with empathy. "How could I have been so blind, Dad? I thought Alex and I were different," I said, feeling the weight of my naivety. He walked over and put an arm around my shoulders. "You wanted to see the best in him, in them. There's no fault in that. But people show their true colors in tough times. It's a hard lesson, but an important one." I nodded, letting the reality of Dad's words sink in. But what do I do now? I asked. I can't go back there. You'll stay here for now, he said, his confidence a steadying force for my frayed nerves. As for the rest, we'll figure it out together. Then he dropped a bombshell that took me by surprise. You know, the company situation isn't as dire as it seems. We're actually on the verge of a breakthrough. It was all a strategic move to weed out the opportunists. I stared at him, stunned. So you mean to say we're not broke? He chuckled, a sound that was part relief, part amusement. Far from it. But it was crucial to see who would stick around when times got tough. Unfortunately, Alex and his family revealed their true colors. The revelation was overwhelming. My anger toward Alex and his parents was now tinged with a sense of vindication. They had shown their true motives, freeing me from a future of manipulation and deceit. Dad, I don't know whether to be relieved or furious, I admitted, my emotions in turmoil. Both is okay, he said, grounding me. But remember, this experience has taught you something invaluable about people and their intentions. Use it. Learn from it. The next day, walking up to Judy and Martin's house felt like heading into the lion's den. I was braced for a confrontation, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold reception I received. Alex was there, divorce papers in hand, with a look of triumphant disdain. Here you go. Let's get this over with, he said, practically shoving the papers at me. His parents loomed behind him, barely containing their glee at finally ridiculing the freeloader. Judy snickered while Martin nodded in agreement, a smug smile plastered on his face. Alex joined in. Turns out you're just an ordinary dummy without your daddy's money. Thought you'd cry, but guess what? We don't need a tearful mess around here. Their words stung, but not in the way they had hoped. I felt a bizarre mix of anger and liberation. I looked at the papers, then at them, and without a word, signed where needed. Their smiles widened, thinking they had won, but I had the last laugh. I pulled out a newspaper from my bag and slapped it down on a table with more force than necessary. Thought you might find this interesting, I said, my voice dripping with unrestrained satisfaction. The headline screamed about my dad's company making a monumental comeback, profits soaring higher than ever. Watching their faces drain of color was a sight I'd pay to see again. Judy and Martin's smugness vanished, replaced by shock and then desperation. Alex's arrogance crumbled, leaving him looking like a child who'd just lost his favorite toy. Judy suddenly switched gears, stepping toward me with arms wide open. Oh, my sweet girl, it's all a big misunderstanding. Let's hug it out. Martin, ever the opportunist, chimed in. Let's not rush things. Sit down, have a coffee, and we can talk this through. And Alex. Oh, Alex. Was the picture of regret. I was wrong, I said, a hint of incredulity in my voice. Okay, we can fix this. I want to make everything right. Please. Their sudden change of heart was almost comical. Almost. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, hearty sound that felt surprisingly cleansing. You three are something else, you know that. But here's a newsflash for you. I'm done. I'm done with the lies, the manipulation, and the so-called family that only values me for my bank account. I turned to leave, their protests and pleas fading into the background. They called after me, desperation and disbelief lacing their voices, but I didn't look back, not this time. After the spectacle at Judy and Martin's house, I was finished, not just with them, but with the whole sorry saga that had become my life. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate. I took some time to regroup at my parents' place, focusing on getting my head and heart back in the game. One afternoon, a couple of weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was out for coffee with Sarah, my ever-supportive friend who had been there through it all. Girl, you look like a weight's been lifted, she commented, sipping her latte. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. You have no idea. It's like I can finally breathe again. Sarah leaned in, her expression turning serious. So what's next for you, Jess? You've got a clean slate now. I stirred my coffee absent-mindedly, contemplating. I'm not sure, but I'm excited to find out. Maybe I'll travel, pick up some of the charity work I had to put on hold. As for love, I paused, giving her a rueful smile. I think I'll give that a miss for a while. Just make sure you're doing what makes you happy, okay? You deserve it after all that drama, Sarah said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Thanks, Sarah. That's the plan. Not long after that conversation, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from Alex. He was pleading, saying he changed and that we could start over. His parents even joined in, sending messages filled with apologies and invitations to talk things over. Sitting in my room, phone in hand, I couldn't help but laugh at their sheer audacity. It was almost admirable. Almost. I typed out a response I'd been mulling over for days. Moving on means moving forward, not going back to what broke you. I wish you all the best, but this is where our path ends for good. Take care. Hitting send felt like closing the final chapter of a book I'd been stuck in for too long. Just like that, I was ready to start writing a new one. The next few months were a blur of activity. I threw myself into my work, took up volunteering with a vengeance, and even booked a solo trip to a place I'd always wanted to visit. Life was full, and for the first time in a long while, it was fulfilling too. One evening, sitting on a balcony overlooking a bustling street in a far-off city, I realized I'd found what I'd been searching for all along: peace. The drama, the heartache, and the betrayal seemed like distant memories. My phone buzzed with a new message from a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I opened it. It was from someone I'd met during my travels, someone who made me laugh and think in equal measure. "Hey Jessica, how about dinner when you're back?" No expectations, just food and good company. I stared at the message, a smile slowly spreading across my face. Maybe it was time to open my heart again, but on my terms and at my pace. "Yes, I'd like that," I typed back, hitting send before I could second-guess myself. Looking out at the city lights, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. I had moved on, not just from Alex and his family, but from the person I was when I was with them. I was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next.